I'm with Debbie Altham. Debbie's the Senior Director of Technology here at Sikich and the author of Which Microsoft ERP is Right for You section of our guide. So Debbie, what options do viewers have available to them when they're looking at a Microsoft ERP solutions?
Well, there are two ERPs on the market. There's Business Central. The full name is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And then there is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, also known as Finance and Supply Chain. So
Okay.
two ERPs. There's a variant of each. We spend more time with Business Central talking about an on-premise option of the cloud version. So you could say maybe three options. With Finance and Operations, we tend to just rest on the cloud version.
Okay, so how do we recommend that organizations go about determining which solution might be the right fit for their company?
Well, there's some really quick rules of thumb, and they relate to the size and complexity of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Finance and Operations is prima facie more expensive than Business Central by a factor of 2, 3, 4, or 5, depending on what you need. So generally speaking, Finance and Operations is for the larger, more complex, more distributed organizations, maybe with more business lines of business. Business Central is more targeted at the single entity, maybe single country, local sort of business. It can go pretty deep in terms of some of the manufacturing and distribution needs, but generally speaking, the size is something to consider just in terms of how much you're prepared to spend. And that goes to budget. So with Finance and Operations, the software for anyone who's upgrading from a existing Dynamics Microsoft product, there are discounts that will apply to both to recognize the investment you've already got, which actually makes Finance and Operations pretty affordable in comparison. But again, Finance and Operations are higher per user per month cost for the subscription for the software. So your budgets are going to need to be somewhat bigger. User counts, there's been people tossing around that Business Central maybe is focused, and I would think this is true. Business Central is focused on organizations with less than 250 named users. I believe that Business Central can go bigger, but just in terms of general recommendations, 250 and lower for Business Central. Transaction volumes might make a little difference too. Certainly with Business Central, they might make a difference on whether or not you go on premises or in the cloud. And Finance and Operations is pretty unlimited, so we don't really have a ceiling in terms of transaction numbers. Now to scope. Both of the products have a good support across the board for financials, distribution, manufacturing. With Business Central, you have standard discrete manufacturing support, and Sikich has done some special industry add-ons for industrial equipment manufacturers, people who engineer to order, make to order organizations for Business Central. In the manufacturing side, in Finance and Operations, it's got solid support for project-based manufacturing, hybrid, discrete, and process. So a little bit broader. I would have said in terms of the manufacturing, that's probably the biggest the difference. Finance and Operations generally is far more functional, far more targeted at larger organizations. So things like, if you have to comply with SOX, it's got a sort of more sophistication around segregation of duties. It's got a far more robust management system for dealing with the month end. And again, these are all attributes of the larger organization. I would say also lifecycle services is one of the big differentiators with Finance and Operation. It's the way that the software is managed by Microsoft and by the partner and by the client. But really the biggest differences.
So what words of advice would you offer for those deciding between BC and F&O?
Probably the first thing is to understand, where you fit in terms of that sizing. Is it reasonable? Are you on the cusp? Are you growing really quickly? And consider finance and operations if you do feel that additional functionality or more depth and functionality is important for you. I would say don't think about where you are now and what you do today. You're buying a system that's going to last you for the next potentially 10, 15, 20 years. And you don't really want to be swapping from one to the other in like 3, 5, 7 years' time. Right. So it may be prudent if you're going through a huge amount of growth, or you see a lot of growth in your future, if you're diversifying, creating a whole lot of different lines of business, is to consider where maybe you're going to be in 3, 5 years' time. And take a look at the products in light of the fact that, if you put in something that works for you today, you really want to make sure that it's going to work for you in the future. So take that sort of medium to long-term view. That's the advice I'd give.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate your time.